I guess I am. I talked to somebody recently, a good friend who I've known for a very long time, about a very disturbing topic, actually. And it came up sort of randomly, to be honest. The topic was nuclear war. And I thought I would see what you guys thought about it. But
Gotcha.
I'd love to get your opinion on it. Because here's the thing. I mean, the way they painted the picture, it sounds like nuclear war is imminent. And this person, I won't say much about who they are, but they've, had some interesting insights in the past. And now it seems like they're very much telling me about this imminent nuclear war that is coming. And I'd like to talk about it for a minute because here's what I think is happening. President Trump's been playing a very dangerous game over the last, I don't know, 12 years, let's say, with the entire world. And it's actually leading to some real world consequences that we're going to start feeling. Now, you may say to yourself, oh, well, we felt all these things before. We know what that is. We know what that looks like. But I mean, do we? Have we? Are we feeling it for what it really is? Or are we, um, you know, at a point where we don't know anything as far as what's coming? Now, why do I say that? Well, I say it because, you know, the person I talked to said that they think the nuclear war is coming within the next year. So they say by the end of 2026, their actual prediction was fall. And their rationale was this, that essentially Russia's been negotiating with all of these different nations in the BRICS banking system with China and India, South Africa, and Brazil. And they are right now circumventing the United States for a lot of things. And one thing is, what's the biggest indicator? Well, the biggest indicator right now is if you look at silver and gold, okay? Silver and gold are skyrocketing. And you think that was going to happen, that was a part of the plan. I mean, obviously the banks, issuing these sort of whatever you want to call ETF type deals with gold and silver where there wasn't the physical gold or silver to back the numbers or the trading volume, whatever it was, like you knew that was all going to fail. But what they said to me was very interesting. They pointed out that China, and this is their observation, you can tell me what you think in the comments, but they pointed out that China's basically shut down their silver, or no, excuse me, not China. Mexico has shut down their silver mines. I don't know how entirely true that is. I know there's always going to be gaps in that um, whole thing. But what they're saying is that the silver is only being traded within the BRICS banking system. They're trying to sort of siphon that off. And that's why US dollar to silver ratio is going crazy, because the physical silver is actually being restricted in real time. Now, the physical silver goes in things like solar panels, which are going to be huge going in the future as far as production of energy, right? And not only that, they say that the gold is also being restricted, as we've seen with China. They've shut down all their um, trade. They're holding all their gold. They're doing everything they can to sort of restrict that. And what is gold used for? Well, gold is used for, obviously, microchips and processors and other things. So they pointed all this out to say, look at the bigger picture, right? If gold and silver are on this trajectory of the global tightening, why are they doing that now? And the biggest indicator is looking at the price, right? What's gold? 70, 80 bucks an ounce right now. Gold's over $4,000 an ounce. It's not because the intrinsic value of gold or silver went up that much overnight. It's because the global production of it is being limited and the flow and circulation of it is being limited. So somebody said that the mic's not. Oh, yeah. Good call. Somebody said I had the mic upside down, and I do. So good point on you. I'll try to keep the mic up. So to sort of summarize this in a better way, the silver and gold, right, is being restricted, but it's not being, and it's being inflated monetarily, but it's not because the value's gone up. It's because the actual commodity accessibility has gone down, right? So if the actual commodity accessibility has gone down, what does that tell you? Well, it tells you a few things. It tells you that countries are preparing for something. Now, what are they preparing for? My, let's just say, friend, source, whatever you want to say, believes, and I think it's an interesting thought, that it's predicated entirely on the idea that nuclear war is coming, and I'll explain why, right? The entire issue at hand is that the Gog, Magog, sort of end times, if you believe in pre-tribulation biblical, understanding of the Bible, I think that if you believe that, we're heading directly into it, right? Head first right now. And that's if you believe that, and if you don't, you're entitled to believe what you want. And I don't even know 100% what I believe. I understand what's going on in the world, and I've seen these sort of predictions. And again, this is something that was brought to me. I didn't concoct this on my own. I didn't think of this on my own. I just was presented with this theory and thought, oh, that's interesting. And basically what they're saying is that this is all going to come to a head where, and it all makes sense, especially if you read the Bible, where Russia is in talks with Turkey and Iran. And remember, this all, biblically, if you believe that, which I do, this all kicks off somewhere around Turkey, and this all kicks off somewhere in that general area. It could be all the way up through Ukraine, I guess, with a nuclear exchange, some sort of limited nuclear exchange. And I'm just saying that from my personal viewpoint, right, it would stand to reason that this is something that is very possible, right? So how is it going to happen? That's the question, right, that everybody wants to know the answer to. Everybody wants to know, how is it going to happen? Well, it's going to happen something like this, from what I've heard. Sometime, and you can bookmark this and save it, and a lot of times when I make these predictions or share these sort of insights, I don't want to be right, but sometime in fall of this year, the new year, 2026, we're going to have some sort of limited nuclear exchange in one of the, perhaps it'll probably be a Middle Eastern country. It'll probably be somewhere close to, I would guess, modern day Turkey, but somewhere in that region or around that region. And that will in turn set off a sequence of events that will eventually create the, let's just say, domino effect that will ultimately lead to a full on cataclysmic series of events that we can't undo. Now, also, if you put in on top of this the idea that there have been some people saying, and I'll put this as vaguely as I can because I don't want to make any, I'm making bold predictions, but I don't want to make too bold of predictions here, that there will be a moment in the next 2 to 4, or no, let's say 4 to 6 months from now, that will prevent President Trump from being the president anymore. And I mean that in just the most vague of terms. And I don't mean that as anything other than it could be any number of reasons you pick off of a random chart of things. You know, like he has to step down, he resigns, he's got a health issue, he's, God forbid, something worse than that. And that all of this is superseded or surpassed by then the events in the fall that lead to a broader conflict. Now, again, I'm not making these predictions on my own. This is something that was brought to me today by a man I trust. So you know he's a man. Oh no, right? Not giving away anything. But when you put it in conjunction with where the country's at, where the precious metals are at, there is something coming. And I know that sounds ominous and stupid and vague. And I'm not trying to be ominous and stupid and vague, because obviously that's not what I want to do, and that's not what I aim to do with any of my videos. But I do think that that's what's on the horizon, okay? People can laugh and hate and say it's not true, and that's fine. Look, I hope I'm not true. I'm just saying that the numbers don't lie, right? Like, I'm not crazy in noticing the sudden spike in precious metals, the sudden spike in this talk about nuclear war, the sudden spike in people coming out and making it all but too clear that this is the trajectory we're headed on. You had the nuclear channel for Russia just recently come out and start playing the, and I know this people may not understand this, but they played, I think it was I don't want to try to say the name of the composer because I'll probably get it wrong and butcher it, but Swan Lake, classical song, very closely tied to Cold War nuclear actions and other things. You had the U.S. nuclear, I think it's a ham radio type channel, come out and start, you know, broadcasting certain messages and things. And I have to say this, on top of all of that, you have all of these factors coming together with the West that is being infiltrated, inundated, invaded by the, for lack of a better term, Muslim invaders who, let's just be honest, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg in Minnesota, or, you know, West Mogadishu, whatever you want to call it. So it becomes all but too obvious, right, that there is, in fact, a clear and present threat for this to take place here in the next, I'm going to say 6 to 12 months, but nobody knows the time, right? So what am I going to do? What are we going to do? What should we do if this is what's coming? Well, I thought about it today. I gave it, considerable thought. And I thought, what is going to be most productive and most proactive as far as combating this is, in many ways, a lot of this is outside of you and I's control and or our ability to stop. But I'd like to make a attempt at doing a couple things. First of all, I'm going to keep giving you guys updates as I'm made aware. This was the update that I got today. And I don't throw this stuff out there, willy-nilly. You know me, I won't just come on with some random stuff. I mean, I heard this from somebody I trust who I think's got good insight and considerable wisdom on this matter, and man, they made a very appealing or a very interesting and thought-provoking case for why nuclear war may be more imminent than we all think. And it's always the normalcy bias, right? You and I right now are living in the normalcy bias. The whole world is normal and has been normal for most of our lives. So there is absolutely no reason why we aren't particularly facing a position where we get so used to things being the way that they are that we're not prepared for what's coming. So what I'd like to do is prepare you guys, and I want to do it. I want to just show you what I'm doing to prepare. I've made my mind up that I think a few videos I'm going to start trying to work on from here are going to be videos very centered on how I, do my life. But I have chickens that I'm raising, producing eggs. That's a good thing. I produce a garden that produces vegetables and fruits and things that we eat throughout the year. I stock up on supplies. I have sort of like a doomsday bunker. I have things that I keep in rotation as far as having supplies that I believe are important. But then it even goes beyond that, making connections with your neighbors and having a community and doing all these other things. I mean, that's important as well. So I'd like to make videos on that, but and it's prepping at the end of the day. However, I will say this, that that news kind of shook me to my core, I'll say, in the way it was delivered, because it all just made so much sense. Particularly when you look at the relationship between Russia and the United States, and it's how central it is to our entire existence right now, and how it's sort of crumbling in front of our very eyes. And it's not even necessarily Trump's fault, and I don't want to say it's even Putin's fault. I want to say it's the apparatus of the East and the West, Russia and the United States, the sort of deep state blob apparatus that grew and manifested or metastasized within those particular nations that has led us to this point where you have both sides, no matter what the leaders say, no matter what Russia says, no matter what Trump says, no matter what Dmitry Kirillov on Twitter says, no matter what Dan Scavino says on Twitter, because if you think about it, those are mirrors, right? And I know this is going to sound crazy, but those are mirrors. Donald Trump and Dan Scavino is merely a mirror of Vladimir Putin and Dmitry Kirillov, because they represent this message that is being mirrored. Now, why are they mirroring a message? They're mirroring a message to signify, not to us, but to one another, that there is a stalemate that is being reached right now. The stalemate that is being reached is this incredible point that's been biblically predicted. And I don't know if it's going to happen now. I don't know the day or the time. I just think it's wise to be prepared, and there will be signs. And we're seeing a lot of signs that may indicate that there's something happening here, right? When you see Trump and Scavino posting the Q stuff, and then you see Kirillov and Putin kind of playing into that as well, you're seeing two sides of the same coin, but it's not even that. Like I said, it's a mere reflection. And it's a tactic. And I think that there are going to be massive things coming this year. And I wish I could, better articulate what those are going to be exactly right now. But I do know, and I can tell you this, that we are facing a situation where not only are we dealing with the normalcy bias, right, that is paralyzing a lot of us from being prepared and getting ourselves in the right frame of mind to be ready for what's coming, but I believe that somebody just said, I've been hearing this for the same thing for years now, that has been a part of the entire agenda. And I'm not saying that there's a agenda. I'm saying the psychological warfare is not played out in a matter of days or weeks or even months. It's played out in a matter of years. And psychological warfare happens, it's not like a flash flood flowing through a canyon. Psychological warfare is more like a slow drip of water on a rock that weathers a stone over time and shapes it to what it needs you to, or what it desires the final form to be, right? And I think that's where we're at. And there are other nations that are far more prepared. Our nation is 100% compromised. Even though I really like Trump and I think he's a great leader, I think he's got problems when it comes to other nations' involvement in his administration. Many people have pointed this out, and I think this is a fair criticism of Trump, that he is either willfully put on blinders, or he has accepted the fact that he is subservient to whatever these forces are that come out of foreign nations. And for whatever it's worth, you give credit where positive things happen, but you also have to be quite observant and critical when things aren't going the way you want. And that's where I'm at right now. I'm done with all of this. I'm done with the pretext of, having to support somebody just because they say one thing you like and then having to support them blindly forever. I support Trump when he does the right thing. I do not support Trump when he does the wrong thing. And that's how it should be with anyone, anytime, anywhere, no matter who they are. This MAGA cap that you see right there is not an indication of blind allegiance. It's an indication of a allegiance to an ideology that is set on the total and complete desire to make this country the best that it can be now, and if you look back in history, comparing that to today. And I don't see it. I don't see it right now. I don't see the greatness, to be quite honest. Our country is overrun with philandering homosexuals who are destroying culture. You have corporate demons who are sucking dry the middle class for everything they have in their pockets. You have a completely inept, anesthetized middle class that has no care because they're brainwashed and hypnotized by Netflix and the media and the social media that just completely paralyzes their their ability to process thought, and there's critical thinking bypass that takes place in how they process the world around them. And when you factor all of those things together, on top of the unmitigated third world invasion, no matter what Trump says, nothing he's doing is enough. It's not enough to just shut down the border. It's not enough to just, it's a good start, so I give credit where it's due, but it's not enough to just have your ICE raids in certain cities and make a public, have a publicity stunt where Kristi Noem can go, in front of a camera tell you how great she is and how great the organization is. It's not enough to do any of those things. It's going to take a far more broad and all-encompassing effort to try to actually tackle the problems that face this nation. And Trump's made a great attempt at it, but in many regards, he's failing. And I'm not afraid to say that. I have no concern saying it because I don't care as far as anything is concerned. I don't have any thing to prove other than the truth. I want the truth to be told. So that's where we're at. And it's funny because you see it in so many different things. And some of those things I've seen myself here, to be quite honest. I don't want to play some of them. Kyle Seraphin put up this post today talking about Pam Bondi and what she's doing. And I want to play this, and I want to play it so that everybody hears it. This is Pam Bondi on hate speech. Listen to this. He replayed this. I think this is an older clip, but listen to this.
There's free speech, and then there's hate speech. And there is no place, especially now, especially after what happened to Charlie, in our society.
Do you see more law enforcement going after these groups who are using hate speech and putting cuffs on people, so we show them that some action is better than no action?
We will absolutely target you, go after you, if you are targeting anyone with hate speech, anything. And that's across the aisle.
It's across the aisle. And then I hear today that one of the top Israeli Mossad people, chiefs, has come out now and said that they are, advocating for, of course, the basically abolishing the First Amendment in the United States, right? Getting rid of it because, we can't have anti-Semitism. And to be quite honest with you, I'm pretty much at a point where I could give two shits less about what some Israeli spy chief has to say about our rights here in America. No matter what anybody wants to say. They want to say that that's anti-Semitic or that's, whatever, then they can go fuck themselves, as far as I'm concerned. Excuse my language. So that's my opinion on it. And on top of all of that, there are some other things that are quite interesting that I thought would be worth sharing. And this is one that I think is interesting. So the CBS News, the fake news, aired a piece from their evening news broadcast. And I just want to play this and let it sink in for you to understand how desperate they are to convince you to trust them again. Okay? And I know that this sounds crazy, but I want you to understand this clip that you're about to hear, which is a CBS evening news broadcaster desperately pleading with you, the audience, to trust them again, because even he cannot ignore the fact that nobody trusts these lying propagandist shills whose entire careers are predicated on lying to you and misleading you and driving you into trusting things that you shouldn't trust. So listen to this.
A lot has changed since the first person sat in this chair, but for me, the biggest difference is people do not trust us like they used to. And it's not just us, it's all of legacy media. And I get it. I get it because I've been hearing about it from just about everybody for more than 20 years as I've traveled America on this assignment or that. My mom's neighbors in West Virginia, my own neighbors in New York City, thousands and thousands of conversations in between. Sometimes people want to talk to me about our coverage of NAFTA or the Iraq War. Other times it's all about Hillary Clinton's emails or Russiagate. Or more recently, COVID lockdowns, Hunter Biden's laptop, or the president's fitness for office. The point is, on too many stories, the press has missed the story because we've taken into account the perspective of advocates and not the average American. Or we put too much weight in the analysis of academics or elites and not enough on you. And I know this because at certain points, I have been you. I have felt this way too. I felt like what I was seeing and hearing on the news didn't reflect what I was seeing and hearing in my own life.
I could play the whole clip, but you get it. And you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that meme that's very popular. It's Steve Buscemi, the actor, and he's dressed up as a high school kid, and he's in a high school hallway with lockers around, and he's got the backwards cap on. He's like, "What's up, my fellow high school students?" with his skateboard hanging over his shoulder. And I just got to be honest, that's what that entire thing reads to me, especially when you consider the fact that he's just sitting there reading off of a teleprompter, right? So that's where we're at. That's where we're at. We're at a point where they are terrified of you guys figuring out the truth. Now, to Trump's credit, I will point out one thing that I think is very interesting. And that is a post that was made on social media by President Trump the other day. And that post, in fact, was interesting for a number of reasons. First of all, it was a true social media post that had a picture of a windmill and a bird that was dead on the ground. And the caption that Trump put with it said, "Windmills are killing all of our beautiful bald eagles." Now, remember, this is coming right on the heels or in the middle of President Trump hosting Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu at, I'm not sure if it was the White House or Mar-a-Lago, I think it might have been Mar-a-Lago, for a sort of New Year's Eve celebration, right? Again, on top of extended peace negotiations between Ukraine and Russia and bringing Israel in, etc. But what was fascinating about the picture that President Trump shared and showed is that the picture was not of an American windmill, and it had some interesting things that you should and could have picked up on in it. For one thing, people are pointing out that the writing on the windmill seems to be in Hebrew and seems to be a windmill located in Israel. That's an interesting thing. And the bird itself was not a bald eagle. It was, in fact, some other bird from the Middle East, which may tie into some other things. It may have been like a type of falcon that goes into falconry, which goes into Osama bin Laden, which goes into the Saudi royal family. And I can get you receipts on all of that if you're interested. But then it also has one of the craziest things you could imagine, a timestamp on the photo that says 9/11. Is Trump telling us the truth about 9/11? I don't know. Is that the point of the post? I don't know. It's also got the number 13. That has high occult significance. But I don't know. But I'll tell you this, it wouldn't surprise me one bit to know that this is something that is directly related to 9/11, Israel's involvement, and perhaps Israel's involvement in killing Charlie Kirk. And there I said it. I don't give two shits about any of the detractors out there. I'm just going to call it how it is. That's what it seems like. You tell me what you think, right? Somebody asked if I saw his post on Iran, and the answer is yes. He also went so far as to post another picture of the eagle going down. People pointed out the fact that eagles, and this is with more windmills, and I think that's might be a picture of an actual bald eagle, but people are referencing I think that Bill Clinton's Secret Service code name was Eagle, so perhaps there is something there. Clinton's might be going down. I don't know. Trump wrote an interesting post about if Iran shoots down or shoots and kills violently peaceful protesters, that there will be some sort of retaliation from the United States. Look, this all goes back to the nuclear war aspect, okay? I think we all have to deeply consider the fact that the framework has been laid almost perfectly. And oftentimes I'm the first person to be skeptical and think, even if it seems a certain way, it may be a different way. But I also understand that there is a subset of people, especially in this elite cabal system, whose entire agenda is extracting from things like scriptural prophecy and then manifesting that in the real world, but manifesting it in a way to affect their, or to positively affect their positions, right? And or manipulate the masses, and or use it as a massive manipulation, or if it's just the naturally ordained order that God has made that is coming to fruition. Either way, it seems to be what's unfolding before our eyes, right? That's the best way I could describe it. Somebody just said when Q said we have to walk through dark times to get through to the light. Perhaps, but we are facing what can only be described as a modern day full-on fulfillment of biblical prophecy. If you believe in all that, which I do, but that doesn't mean you have to. And if you don't believe in that, then consider the fact that there are people out there who understand the Bible very deeply, and understand there are those who believe the Bible who want to fulfill that prophecy and enact that evil or series of events, let's say. So that's the way I read the situation as far as I'm concerned. But of course, everyone is entitled to their own opinion when it comes to all of this. And before you start telling me that, well, I heard this person say this, and I heard that, take this all with a grain of salt and use your own opinion and judge for yourselves. But I want to read, or I want to share this clip from a CIA, I think this is a former CIA officer, talking about how they recruit people on social media. So when you think about Sean Ryan, and you think about all these big names, and I'm not even saying Sean Ryan's in this category, but just think of all the big names and all the people who have been on YouTube and have never been censored, have never spent 5 years in the digital gulag like I did. 5 years in digital prison. Think about those people who were around for those 5 years, who didn't have their channels taken down, who didn't have their platforms censored. And I'm not saying it's all of them, but think about them when you hear this clip. Listen to this.
The way that a Gen Z person might get recruited is, let's just use you as an example. Somebody comes up and says, hey man, I love your podcast. And they say, I have a serious question for you though. Would you consider yourself a patriot? Now I've got you locked into identity. And then I say, well, I have an offer for you, but before I show you anything, I just want you to say yes or no. Would you be willing to entertain the offer? And it might be uncomfortable. Stage one is I show you all of your browsing history, captures from your webcams on all of your phones and computers of you doing the most compromising shit you could ever possibly imagine. And I'd say, I like your podcast. I think you're doing a great job, and I want to protect you. I want to keep all this from the public eye. We also want to give you $20,000 a month. So now you feel like you chose all of this. I told you it was going to be stressful, and you agreed to it. If you say yes, the reason that you're doing this on your podcast is for your country, because you're not going to call yourself compromised. We have this thing called cognitive dissonance that keeps our brain from thinking I'm a bad person. Even though you're being asked to silence people, not have certain people on the show, leave something out of your podcast, you're telling yourself, and whoever's your handler is telling you this is for the greater good. And you kept Americans safe by doing that. And you'll tell yourself that. and you'll feel good about it.
What happens if I say no?
I'll tell you what happens if you say no. You get locked in the digital gulag for 5 years. That's what happens. If they have nothing on you and they can't control you, and or you don't care about what they have on you, you get locked up. So I'll just leave it there. I'll let you guys chew on that. And that's going to be it for this live stream, because that was all I had to say. But to be quite honest with you all, I'm glad I said what I said today. And I pray. I'll pray with you right now. Lord and Heavenly Father, God, I pray for discernment in all this, that we may honor you, that the audience watching right now will find discernment in understanding what information to accept and what information to reject, and how to discern all of it. Pray for the same for myself. Pray in thanks for what you've given us. And I pray in thanks for your plan, which is perfect, that I trust fully. In Jesus' name, amen. There you go. That's it. But I'm glad I ended on that note, because God's in control. God's got a plan. And it's going to come together one way or another. I'll see you guys on the next one. Godspeed and God bless each and every one of you patriots.